10 African countries that need to change their names. A country's name, however small, says a lot about the country. Most names carry a meaning behind them. For example, numerous places in the former Soviet Union and its satellites were renamed to honor Stalin for a variety of reasons. Other reasons for renaming include removing an offensive or unpleasant name as part of a sponsorship contract or as a PR stunt. A change could result in the adoption of a fully new name or just a minor adjustment in spelling. Today, we are going to look at some of the countries in Africa that need a name change. Which countries need a name change, and why do they need a name change? Stay tuned. Number 10. Guinea-Bissau. Guinea-Bissau is a Western African country. The primarily low-lying terrain, which is located on the Atlantic coast, becomes slightly hillier further inland. Guinea's name is a point of contention. It is thought to be a corruption of an Amazigh Berber phrase meaning country of the blacks. To distinguish itself from Guinea, its eastern and southern neighbor, the country takes the name of its capital, Bissau. After the late 19th century, the French exerted pressure on both the northern and southern borders of what is now known Guinea-Bissau, and the Casamance region of southern Senegal was totally under French control. The country of the blacks does not sound very welcoming, rather it sounds racist. Number 9. Morocco. It's not uncommon for individuals to wonder about the names of countries. Morocco is among them. Most people have always been curious about the name Morocco and where it came from. Was the name Maroc derived from an Almoravid or Berber word? What was the original name of the land? Moroccan history and geography were sometimes referred to as Al-Maghrib al-Aqsa, meaning the farthest west, by medieval Arab historians and geographers to distinguish it from neighboring lands called Al-Maghrib al-Awsa, meaning the Middle West. Under the Almoravid dynasty and the Almohad Caliphate, Marrakesh served as Morocco's capital. Known as Fars in Turkish, the name is derived from the city of Fes in Morocco's history. Morocco, which stems from Marrakesh, was anglicized to form the English name Morocco. Morocco is not an African name. If the country decided to change the name, it would be to a more African name, because the country's history, unlike other countries, is not tied to some horrible historical event. Number 8. Central African Republic. Named after its position in Africa's central region and the fact that it is a republic, the Central African Republic needs a name change unique to its people or culture. The Central African Empire ruled this country from 1976 to 1979. In 1993, the first multi-party democratic elections were held in the country. In the 2003 coup, General Francois Bozizé deposed Angi Felix Patasse and replaced him as president. The Bush War in the Central African Republic began in 2004 and resurfaced in 2012, despite a peace pact signed in 2007 and another in 2011. After a decade of bloody civil war, which saw widespread and rising violations of human rights by various armed groups, the country was left with a human rights record that was even worse than before. As of 2017, the Central African Republic had the lowest GDP per capita at purchasing power parity in the world. The conflict in the Central African Republic has been raging since 2012, and this is most importantly the reason why the country needs a name change, to get rid of the bad reputation and start afresh. Number 7. Mauritius. In honor of Dutch Republic Prince Maurice of Nassau, a Dutch squadron led by Admiral Wybrand van Warwick arrived on the island in 1598 and christened it Mauritius. In 1638, the Dutch arrived on the island and exploited the ebony trees and brought sugarcane, domestic animals, and deer. When the Dutch explorer Abel Tasman ventured from here in search of the Great Southern Land, he was able to survey parts of Tasmania, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea. 20 years passed before the first Dutch settlement was abandoned. In 1639, slaves from Madagascar landed in Mauritius. In order to clear ebony trees and work on new tobacco and sugarcane plantations, the Dutch East India Company sent them to the region. As a result of the failure of future attempts to create a permanent colony in Mauritius, the Dutch decided to leave the island in 1710. Apparently, the island was known as the Island of Monkeys at the time, according to a 1755 article in the English Leeds Intelligencer, because of the enormous number of long-tailed macaque monkeys, which destroyed everything in it. Prior to Dutch domination, these monkeys were brought to the island by Portuguese sailors from their native Southeast Asian environment. The Mauritius name has a long unpleasant history attached to it, and a change would definitely do Mauritians good. This will help erase the bad history and, for one, a better story of the country or stronghold. Number 6. Cameroon. The Atlantic coast of Cameroon is the meeting point of Western and Central Africa. To honor the river of prawns which Portuguese explorers discovered, they dubbed it Rio de Cameras. The northwestern Mandara Mountains, coastal plains, a highly forested plateau, and savanna plains make up Cameroon's geography. Cameroon was a German colony, German Cameroon, from 1884 to 1914, with its borders determined by the Germans, the British, and the French after discussions. French administration was given most of the country by the League of Nations after World War I, with British control limited to a small area in the west. France and the UK retained sovereignty of their respective regions of French Cameroon and British Cameroon after World War II. When the United Nations, the League's successor, implemented a trusteeship system. Some of the British Cameroons voted to join the former French Cameroon in 1960, making Cameroon a sovereign state for the first time in its history. Since independence, Cameroon has had only 2 presidents. While opposition parties were allowed in 1990, only one party has ever ruled. Cameroon, being a German name, with a few spelling twists, suggests that the country needs a name change to something more personal or relatable to its citizens. Number 5. Côte d'Ivoire. Before European conquest, the Ivory Coast was home to several states, including Guiaman, the Kong Empire, and Baoulé. In 1843, the territory became a French protectorate, and in 1893, it was confirmed as a French colony. It declared independence in 1960. Ivory Coast is a republic, with a president who has considerable executive authority. Because of its coffee and cocoa production, the country was a West African economic powerhouse in the 1960s and 1970s. Portuguese referred to it as the Costa do Marfim, which translates to Ivory Coast. The Côte de Dents, which means coast of teeth, and relates to the ivory trade, was another term. Given Africa's long-standing prohibition on poaching, it's odd that the country still bears the moniker. This is why one of the country's strongholds, cocoa, rather than ivory, should be used in renaming the country. Number 4. Djibouti. Although Djibouti is a relatively new country, its history stretches back to the Punt Kingdom, which had a vibrant and frequent commercial relationship with Egypt at the time of its existence. However, how did it come to be known as Djibouti? The Somali Isas believe that the name Djibouti derives from the Somali word for bear, buti, which used to frighten the local populace. After a long and obstinate chase, it was declared that Mish Butida Lagu Jabie, the beast, was beaten and had been slain. As a result, the people of Somalia decided to name their country after this tradition. It is not enough to name a country after a monster. Country names should be names that people can draw inspiration from, hence the need for a name change. Number 3. Sierra Leone. Pedro de Sintra, a 15th century Portuguese navigator, was the first European to see and map the port of Freetown and gave the country its name. The hills that surround the harbor were once called Serra Leão, Lion Mountains, by the Portuguese. One of the world's largest natural harbors is located in Freetown, the capital city of Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is a mining hub, although the majority of the population is engaged in subsistence farming. Diamonds, gold, bauxite, and rutile are among the minerals found on its soil. A devastating civil war raged from 1991 to 2002 in the country, which was ravaged by internal turmoil from the late 1980s. It has been a difficult undertaking for the government of Sierra Leone to reconstruct both the physical and social infrastructure of the country while also encouraging reconciliation. A name change may not do the trick completely, but changing it to something more uniting or motivating will do the country some good. Number 2. Togo. Togo is a West African country. Lomé is the capital and the country's largest city. Between Asante and Dahomey, the territory that is now Togo was an isolated area where ethnic groups lived in relative isolation from one another. As part of Germany's sovereignty over Togoland, it was captured by British and French troops in 1914. The League of Nations apportioned Eastern Togoland to France in 1922 and Western Togoland to Britain in 1923. The United Nations was given trusteeship of the territory by the governments of the United Kingdom and France in 1946. British Togoland was annexed into the Gold Coast 10 years later, whereas French Togoland became a sovereign state inside the French Union. In 1960, Togo became a sovereign nation. Agriculture is the mainstay of the economy, although the vast phosphate reserves are also important. Renaming Togo would be significant because it would use a name that the country identifies with. Either the minerals or the agriculture would form a fantastic name for the country. Number 1. South Africa. More than 100,000 years ago, modern humans first appeared in South Africa, according to archaeological evidence. The Stone Age and the Iron Age are two distinct periods in South Africa's prehistory that may be distinguished by broad technological trends. Known for its varied topography, natural beauty, and cultural diversity, South Africa has become a popular tourist destination since apartheid was officially abolished in 1994. It is the southernmost African republic. As a result, the economy of South Africa is a mix of agriculture, mineral resource extraction, tourism attractions, and intellectual capital development. However, social tranquility is not guaranteed by the greater political equality and economic stability in the country. Ethnic tensions in South Africa persisted into the new century, putting the country's society at risk. A name change would somewhat benefit the country since South Africa is not an African name. The change should be to a more African name or a more uniting name to ease the ethnic tensions in the country. That's all from today's video. See you in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the post notification bell.